Hello and welcome. In today's interview, I'm going to speak with Dani Hall, and this interview is part of the interview series that I'm doing with the contributors for the book, Autism and Buddhist Practice. And the series is where I would like to bring awareness to autists about how amazing Buddhism can be for you to manage your autism, to navigate in the world where you feel like a square peg in a round hole. But it's also meant as an educational series to Buddhist centers, communities, and sanghas to learn how you can accommodate and make your Buddhist sangha attractive to autists. And today I'm speaking with Dani Hall, and welcome, Dani. I'm so happy that you wanted to do the interview. And yes, you have written chapter 3 in the book that is called Calm in the Eye of the Storm, How Buddhism Helps Relationship, Social Interactions, and Sensory Overload. And I love your chapter. I really, really do. You have some that, just like we talked about before I turned the camera on and started to record, you have some things that I find really, really interesting that I really would like to talk about regarding meltdown and shutdowns and burnout. You have amazing experience and amazing description in the book that I warmly can recommend anybody. But before we start, first I would like to hear about your life before and after diagnosis. Then I would like to hear about your Buddhist practice. And then finally, I would love to talk so much about your chapter. Okay. But that is in the later part. But first of all, I would like for you to share about your life, about before and after diagnosis, how it came to be, and where you're at now.
Okay. So briefly, I had a pretty traumatic childhood. I had very unskillful parents due to their causes and conditions. We were homeless a lot. My mother worked a ridiculous amount. She was almost never around. My parents split when I was very young, and my mother married another man who was a profound alcoholic and drug addict. So there was a lot of abuse. I didn't speak hardly at all. When I spoke, but I guess nowadays they would call it selective mutism. I guess I could go days. I could go days without speaking. It was a sanctuary for me to go. I know this now. At the time, I didn't understand it, but it was just it was how I coped. It's how I dealt with things when I was young. I got very quiet, and so I was very quiet as a young child, but then as a teenager, I would have outbursts and meltdowns, and the opposite seemed to be the case. So into adulthood, I also had pretty significant meltdowns throughout my adult life. And then I had children. I have 3 sons. 2 of them are my biological children, and then we took on my son Bradley when he was 12. So I was sorry, I have a frog in my throat. I was diagnosed when my boys were diagnosed. So that has been about 10 years ago now. My son Brendan started having meltdowns when he was a toddler, but we didn't know or understand at the time, what was happening and what was going on. I knew about autism. It's very interesting. I volunteered in high school at a school for gifted children, and I worked with autistic children. I was always drawn to them, very drawn to them when I was doing that work. And now it makes sense. But at the time, I just loved being around them and just loved being with them. So my son started having meltdowns, and then that continued off and on until we finally really needed intervention because of school situations when he was in late elementary school. And so he would completely turn the principal's office upside down. He would wreck chairs, and he would take off running and do all these things. And he was misdiagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, so
yeah,
we
that
went
happens
through
a
it.
lot. Yeah.
It was a nightmare. It truly was. And unfortunately, school is still a nightmare and thank goodness my two older boys have now graduated and are out of the school system. But unfortunately, the school system is very ignorant to the needs of autistic people just in general. So it's a constant fight for us. But we did finally get them, both my son Brendan and Connor, diagnosed. They were diagnosed but roughly the same time. So, and then it was interesting. The behavioral specialist that was working with my children, she just kind of looked at me and said, "Well, you do realize you're autistic as well." And I, to be honest, I was dumbfounded. But after doing, a lot of the research and then, talking to other specialists and in my own therapist and things like that at the time, it wasn't so much, and I've heard this a lot, for other autistic people, that it was a relief. And it was for my children. It was a relief to know, to be able to have the tools and things that I needed to help my children. But for me, it just made sense. It just, so many things just made sense. I was diagnosed early in my adult life with PTSD, OCD, and generalized anxiety disorder. Come to find out, it's just all underneath of,
Same umbrella. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, because I count things, that's one of my stemming behaviors. I count things. I always have. I counted things since I was a little, since I was a child. I still count things. It's just a way to. It just calms me. It just. I'm always counting things. So that was something.
May I just stop you? Could you elaborate on the counting thing? I know exactly what you mean, but I would like for you to elaborate on it.
Oh goodness. So like I have a door that's right in front of me right now, and it has panels on it, and I just count them over and over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if I'm driving, the lines on the streets, I count the segments, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's just something that goes on in the back of my mind, and it just, wherever I'm at, if it's squares on the floor, the tiles, or the window panes of a building, I just have always kind of done that. So
which is very, very often misdiagnosed as OCD.
yes,
And it's got nothing to do with OCD. It's part of a mental stimming. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I learned that and kind of came to that realization later on that it wasn't necessarily OCD. Yeah, it wasn't OCD. So because I didn't have all of the other typical OCD type, I don't have the hand washing and the, OCD can mean a lot of things, but I didn't have all of those specific characteristics. So yeah, so that's how I was diagnosed. And it honestly, it's like I said, it made sense, but it did take me a little time to, I guess, come to terms with that. I kept trying to find reasons why it wasn't true.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't necessarily want to, but it's not that I felt like there was anything wrong with it. It's just that I don't know. But again, I kept coming back to it. It just made so much sense. When I was little, I would always find places in nature to go, to be. When I was stressed, I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be quiet. I wanted to be away from people. I found people exhausting as a child. Even my own family, they didn't really understand me. They always thought I was very odd. I have a certain way of dressing. I like I like dressing a certain way. I always have, and it's generally not what's going on with the society at the time, what's popular or fashionable. And that was always okay with me. Now it's more so comfort because I do have sensory, touch sensory sensitivities. So yeah, there was that. And, I would just hyper focus and fixate on very specific things. And I only ever wanted to think about or talk about those very specific things. So yeah, so it's all the, so my family, I was always very odd and not really accepted within my family. So that was tough. But yeah, so I felt like an alien, I guess, I did. I've always very much felt like I was from a different planet.
Yeah.
But luckily I have a partner who is lovely, and I don't know, it was like he was made for me and for my boys. So he's always accepted me for exactly who I am, and loved me for exactly who I am, and wanted me to always be exactly who I am. And so that was really wonderful. And yeah, so my Buddhist practice. So
may I just
yeah.
say something, because I think
Yes.
you touched on something really, really important, and that it's about that imposter syndrome that we get when we get the diagnosis, that we have that period where we are like, nah, can't be right. There could be so many other reasons why it's like this. I think it's quite normal for people when they get a diagnosis. Either it's like huge relief, or they start, with the imposter syndrome. I've also experienced that a lot with people that are self-diagnosing, that they really do the autistic dive into a topic, and then read and learn everything about it, and then they find out, okay, for sure I am autistic, and then the imposter syndrome sets in, where it's just like, maybe I'm not anyway, maybe it's just so I think it's really important to emphasize that it's so normal that sets in, where we start to find all the reasons why we're quite sure that it is. And it doesn't matter if we're autistic, it doesn't really matter, but we still come up with all those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave that up and just
Yeah.
sank into it, and
Completely.
just
Yeah,
just
completely.
kind
At
of
some
sank
point it's
into it.
just, at some point it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
But it's going into kind of the misunderstanding. I remember the very first time I decided to share with someone, that I was autistic. They looked at me and said, "But you don't act like Rain Man," from that movie. And at the time I was just like, wow, this person has no idea, no idea whatsoever. So autistic, I always use the analogy, or from the book, I think it's even in the book, but the elephant in the room, and, whatever part of the elephant you're touching at the time, that's what an autistic,
Yes.
it means so many things, even within this household, there's 4 of us here, and we're all very different. So I've learned to understand, and I didn't share, honestly, after that comment for a while. I didn't share after that, because it was so, obviously it stuck with me. So it was a bit profound experience to have. But yeah, especially with women, because we mask so much. Yeah, we mask so much, because that's what it's expected. I'm expected to be the strong, especially in our culture now. Women are expected to be these strong, figures that can bear everything. We can be the soccer mom, and the
CEO.
gay mom,
And
taking on all these roles, and we're supposed to just put on. And honestly, I'm an activist as well, and I have worked in autism activism, and I have been with other parents, other moms, neurotypical moms of autistic children, and they did not accept me, really. And I never really quite understood that, but it was hard for them, I guess. And I think it was a little bit that I understood their children in a way that they just never could. So there was a little bit of resentment potentially, but that was always an interesting. So I was never comfortable in any like mom groups or anything like that anyway. Those that were horrifying to me, because they all talked about things that I had zero interest in. They just, to me, and this sounds cold, but it was stupid. It just was stuff that I found completely irrelevant. And so just being in those groups and listening to the conversations, to me, that were completely empty, it was exhausting. So I never really participated in those things. But yeah, there was just profound ignorance when it comes to, what an autistic person looks like. Unfortunately, in this country, it's a little boy who rocks back and forth, or bangs his head, or flaps his hands, and is obsessed with trains.
Yeah.
That's the
And sit
picture.
in the corner and do equations. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that was another thing. So I do have a very high IQ. I was tested in whatever in school and whatnot, but math, I have what's called dyscalculia. So I am brilliant in all the ways. I can catalog ridiculous amounts of information. That's why I'm so good with plants and things like that, because I can catalog so much information. But when it comes to math, no, not so much. So they automatically assume that, because you can't do math or you can't do these, that you're not like Steve Jobs or, some other potentially famous autistic person, that, that somehow it's not true, or, so autistic women in this country are unfortunately not believed a lot of the times
Yeah.
when they do decide to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I don't think it's only in the US. I think it's like worldwide that women tend to get different diagnoses. They tend to get, BPD and anxiety and OCD and depression and mood swings and all of that. Where if you look at it, it's all of it are like, subtitles under the umbrella. It's like completely
Yes.
autistic. You have a part in your book. We're going to circle back to the question about Buddhism and sect, but I just wanted to. You have a part where you talk about how difficult it is to find friends.
Hmm.
To find friends, and we talked about that before we started to record. That especially as autistic women, it's
Hmm.
it's so difficult because that manual that everybody has been given, where they absolutely know what is meant when somebody does like that with the eyes. First of all, we don't pick up on it, and even if we pick up on it, we have no idea what that means. Which means
Yes.
that we completely fall through when it comes to women, to girlfriends, to women friends, being friends with neurotypical women. Where I have always found that men is so much easier. It's so straightforward. There's not all the fiddle faddle, in the corners about and then she said, and then I said, and not it's first of all, I can't follow the logic of that kind of conversation. Second of all, it's so tedious. I mean, who cares? Bring it out in the open. Let's talk about it and let's move on. So it's a very that kind of thinking is not in line with neurotypical women, and I think that's one of the reasons why we as autistic women rarely have neurotypical girlfriends, where we are the neurotypical we're friends with are usually men, and then we have like this magnetic pull towards other autistic women.
Hmm.
I when I enter, for example, the Sangha, I can spot out the autist, right away, and we always end in the same corner.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I had one friend that when I was in school, and that was pretty much it. And honestly, we still keep in touch to this day, but she had a profoundly horrible childhood as well. So we kind of, connected on, we were both very poor, so we connected on that front. But my husband has always been, my partner has always been my best friend.
Yeah.
That's, I struggled horrendously,
Yeah.
with making friends. I'm very direct.
Yes.
I'm very black and white about things, and that can be quite off-putting to people. People don't like to hear the truth. So, unfortunately, they think they do. They really don't.
They really don't. Really,
So,
really don't. No, they're not interested at all. Not interested at all. No.
no, so I have struggled in that way. So it honestly isn't until recently that I've, through my practice, found other women who, this one particular, I'm not going to say her name, but she's an artist, and she believes she may be on the spectrum. But because of the fact that she's an artist, well, she doesn't like to be overwhelmed in crowds, and and things like that. She loves to go to museums where it's quiet, and I love that too. I like the quiet of museums and things like that. So we have that in common. And because of her occupation, she goes off for sometimes weeks at a time, and I don't hear from her. And it is okay. It is
Yes.
totally fine,
Yes.
that she needs her space because I need mine too.
Yes.
So to have someone like that who understands that I don't need to call you or talk to you every single day. I don't need, to hear every little thing that you're doing, every moment of the day that you're doing it, like some women do. And the other thing is, I always felt like I needed, like, that girlfriend to go have tea with, or to go to to have over or whatever, because that's what society made me feel like that I should have, and it's okay that I don't, because that's just, I tried that and it was awful and it failed miserably. And then I felt bad about it after, you know? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
again, you're touching on something that's so, important and valuable to talk about, especially for autistic women. I have lost girlfriends because I didn't keep in touch. And then they felt that they were always the one that needed to initiate, and always the one that needed. And I was happy whenever they contacted me. It wasn't because that in me I didn't want to talk with them. I just didn't. I didn't think of it. It didn't occur to me to do. So I have lost lots of girlfriends that I really, really cared about. But for them, it was they felt, neglected and not prioritized. And so for them it was better, not to discontinue the relationship, because it was too hard for them. So I completely understand what you mean. I have exactly the same. No need for us to be in contact every single day about every single minute detail. I'm completely fine, and you can go off as long as I know that you're fine. I'm going to the woods for 3 weeks. Okay, let's talk in April.
Yes.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's yeah, it's good that I am, and being okay with, with that, and being, comfortable with, either not having it and just having my partner, or, just having that one person that does understand me and I understand her, and we can just do our own thing and then come together when it's right. So yeah,
Super
yeah,
important. Super important. Yeah, super
yeah,
important. We need to talk more about females and autism, women and autism. Definitely it needs to
yes.
be. Really need to turn the floodlight in that direction and really make aware of it, because there's so many women out there that are misdiagnosed.
I know, I feel like a unicorn sometimes,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
seriously.
Okay, thank you so much. I love that.
Yes.
Now I would like to hear about your Buddhist practice, because you have a description about it in the book, and I absolutely love it. It's the thing about the
Yeah.
work. Yeah. So
Yes,
so
yes.
tell me about that.
So I came to, I guess, Eastern practices. I started in yoga about 12 years ago to heal my body, from some surgeries that I had. And that was when I was introduced to meditation. And I love yoga. I still love yoga to this day. And um, the 8 arms of yoga, not just the asana, unfortunately, that's focused on here in the West. It's not just about the physical practice of it. It's about reconnecting with your body, having a relationship, having that internal relationship, knowing, what's going on, how to still your mind through movement. That was a big deal for me, because to me, this is so comforting, and the rocking, and, my
Yeah, the
this that I
fingers both
do.
of us are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so those, and I also tend to rub my
Nice.
thighs, when I'm talking, or when I'm, and for me it is definitely a calming situation, but there are also times that I do it when I'm content. When I'm content, and and that's a misconception, that people think that, oh, Dani, she's anxious, or she's, agitated or something. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily always the case. I mean, could be. Yep, could be. But generally speaking, I needed that, you know, that it was okay for me to use movements, and yoga does that. Yoga, the movement of yoga helps me to calm my mind. It helps me to calm my body. So I did delve into meditation, but I didn't have a I wasn't in, I didn't have the access to the Buddhism. I had looked into Buddhism when I was much younger, when I was late teenager, when I was just trying to find myself, I guess. And I came across Japanese Zen, and it was very intimidating, to be honest, and a little scary at the time for such a young person. Um, so I I was practicing solo. I had been a solo practitioner for about 10 years, when Oh, goodness. So, as I said, I'm an activist and I'm an ecologist, and I work a lot with nature and plants and animals, and I love Mother Earth so very, very much. And she's dying in a sense, I mean, in so many ways, there are so many things that are going away because of, unfortunately, what we are doing. And we got some reports from the UN and from local organizations within the United States that we had lost, billions of birds in 50 years, and that our biodiversity worldwide was just in the toilet, essentially. So that's just had a it kind of broke me in a way. As an activist and as a scientist, I kind of crumbled, and I'm like, what have I been doing? What have I been doing for the past 20 years? I felt completely ineffectual and burnt out. And so I was having a meltdown every single week, pretty much. And I didn't really understand or know how to help myself. I didn't, my mind was just, like I said, it was a storm. It was chaos. It was, every which way. I couldn't, I was so tense and anxious all the time. So and then it was right before the pandemic. So I had walked into this, my husband and I were just kind of out, in this little town that we have. It's quite lovely, and they have this little independent bookstore, which I love. And I walked in, and Ty's book was just sitting on the shelf there, and it's just this little book, How to Fight. And as I said, I started reading it, but it didn't really resonate with me. And it was so funny because I really did flip it over and look at the author's name. I'm like, how do you even pronounce that? How do you pronounce that? So I kept it with me, for a long time. And then I want to say when the pandemic hit, it was everything that I had feared as a scientist, understanding what we're doing to the world, because if we continue to do these things to our earth, we will eventually we will go extinct. There's just, no two ways about that. So the pandemic was just this culmination of everything that I had feared, but the lockdown was wonderful. So I had this, I had this dueling thing going on where it was so scary. I had lost people within my own family from COVID, very early on, and that was a very scary thing. They contracted it, and within 2 weeks they were gone. That was just so very scary. So, but being at home with my family and not having to interact with people, not having to do, mundane things that other people take for granted, like, shopping for your food. My partner does those things because it's so overwhelming to me to be in that space with the smells and the lighting and all the
Yes.
people just
And
pushing in on you.
the layers of sound and the smells of people and oh yeah, I'm the same.
All
I'm
those
exhausted
things.
after shopping. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started having things delivered, to
Yes.
us, which was great. And and for me, having the sensitivities to nature and the world, people weren't driving, people weren't putting out all of these toxins and things into the world. So to me, I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful situation. And I actually started having anxiety about re-entering the world. And, I know that some of the people that I've chatted with, autistic adults that I've chatted with online, had been diagnosed towards the end of lockdown with agoraphobia because they absolutely refused to re-enter and leave their homes. So I could totally relate to that. I didn't want to. I loved the sanctuary that we had created here. I turned my entire property into a wildlife sanctuary, with, I turned it into a Garden of Eden, essentially. And so, I had my pond in the back that had the most soothing water sounds. I could just sit back there in my beautiful garden and, listen to the birds and listen to the water. So reading Ty's book eventually something clicked with me, something absolutely just. And so I just couldn't get enough of Ty. I started watching his videos. I started just consuming as much of him as I possibly could. And as I said in the book, I developed this very deep fear of death. But it wasn't until, and Ty helped me with that. And I still struggle with it, but I'm much better because he has a cloud never dies. A cloud never dies. And he talks about in one of his books how, the wave feels that she is a separate entity. The wave, she feels separate sometimes, but that's not really true. The wave is the water.
Always
The
part
water
of
and
the
the
ocean.
wave.
Yeah.
Exactly. So to me, to know that I will eventually be a part of this beautiful energy or whatever it is that, makes everything, do what it does, flowers bloom, trees grow. I will eventually become part of that energy again. That was very helpful and reassuring for me. So yeah, so I started meditating again, but with Ty's guidance. And he's very, very big on Sangha. He's very big on the 3 jewels. So I felt like I needed to find a practice, center or a Sangha. And I am very blessed, thankfully, that the practice center that we have here in my area in Tampa, the teacher Fred received his transmission directly from Ty. He spent a lot of time with Ty. He actually lived with Ty for a time. So Ty, I mean Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yes.
So yeah, so I looked into the Sangha, and it was very it was a lot of anxiety there because I grew up Christian, I grew up Catholic specifically, and in my experience, there's so much judgment. There is so much judgment in in Christianity. There's, they talk about love and acceptance. Unfortunately, they don't vary. That, in my experience, the places that I have been exposed to do not practice that. They just do not practice that. So I was not sure, what to expect. And I really was raw and vulnerable at this time. Like I said, having, multiple meltdowns, sometimes a week. And a lot of the trauma from my childhood was coming up and other things. So it was interesting and difficult to enter into, a new situation with a whole group of people having all of this, but they were very lovely. They were very lovely, communicated back and forth with Brent on my behalf because I wasn't even the one doing it. I wasn't even the one initiating or facilitating this. My partner Brent was. He was in contact with the center, letting them know that we need a help. We need a place. We need, support. We need spiritual guidance. We need all of these things. And they're very lovely and very sweet. And put me with a mentor who used to be a mental health counselor for veterans and with PTSD and all of those things. So she was lovely, and she still is. Her and I are friends now, and yeah, it was a good experience mostly. I did have missteps where I remember being in a group sharing setting where everybody, was expected, to kind of share something. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to have to share. So I get up all of this courage and I'm literally like almost the last one. And then the person who was moderating it said, I finally get up the courage to raise my hand to share. And the person who was moderating everything said, oh, well, you can share, but only if you can do it in like 2 minutes or something like that. And I immediately shut down.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, I'm okay. I'm not gonna share. And afterward, I had a meltdown and cried, and this people don't understand me, and and it was all of these things. So now I understand that he was unskillful in the way that he handled it, but those are his causes and conditions, and he wasn't trying to be hurtful in any way, but he,
Just,
and
just ignorant. He didn't know about
yes,
autism. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so I do belong to a lovely Sangha that I am educating on a regular basis. I am very open about my my autism. I just actually came through a retreat. I want to say it's been about a month now.
You've been on a retreat. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was just on a retreat about a month ago. So I have done both online and in-person retreats.
Yeah.
The reason the in-person retreat, so in-person retreats are uncomfortable for me.
Yes,
They are.
very, yeah.
I do them though, and I think the only reason I don't know that I could necessarily go to like Plum Village, and do an in-person retreat, because I know no one. I don't know the layout. I don't know the place. I don't know the rules. I don't know. And I'm very rule-based. I'm very much a big follower and believer of structure and rules. And I know the rules of our center. I know the structure. I actually take care of our grounds. Yeah. I help with the plants and do a lot of the gardening and things there. So I developed a very close relationship with a lot of the people that are there. They know that I'm autistic. They understand, obviously they can't completely understand, but they're loving about, the fact that I have limitations. I just do. So like, okay, so we have this thing in our Sangha. It's called the buddy program. I can't participate. So essentially it's a way to keep us on track and diligent in our practice. I don't need that kind of help. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. When I say I'm going to read, and study, I'm reading and studying the Dhammapada right now.
Love it.
So
Love it.
yeah,
Oh,
I
love it.
know.
Yeah, favorite
Yeah.
book. Yeah. Amazing.
So when I say that I'm going to, devote a certain amount of time to that every day, and also to meditation and reflection, I'm going to do those things. I get very focused and I'm very intentional. And when I say I'm going to do things, I do them. Well, this, I suppose in the neurotypical world, that's not a normal thing, and people tend to flake and not do what they say or are supposed to do. So they have this buddy program where they pair you up with someone, and you text each other every morning or every day, or you call, or something like that. And I'm like, I told them it was a part of like an intensive. We have these intensives they're like classes, essentially deep study of, different Buddhist texts or material or suttas or whatever. And you contact this person to talk about your aspirations for the day and what you're working on and whatever in your practice. But I told them, if this is a prerequisite for doing this, I'm not going to be able to participate, because that is completely not something that I am even remotely comfortable with doing. Number one, I don't need it. I just don't. And the other thing about it is that I generally don't always come across that well when I'm, like I say, I'm very blunt, I'm very direct, and I can't tell you how many times, even my own sister who is neurotypical, she's been offended by things that I've texted her. Yes. Because she doesn't understand that they take it the wrong way, and so it's just too overwhelming for me to even deal with. So I've made it very clear that that is just not an okay thing for me.
It's to me, because I'm experiencing the same thing in my Sangha, that we have this, that we need to socialize with the order members that are locally when we're in the ordination process, and it doesn't work for me. It doesn't, no matter how much we try, it doesn't work. And I think I've been through 7 order members now, that all of them have kind of like given up on me, because it's like it's just not happening. I don't fit into that box, and there's something about that forcefulness about it that just doesn't work. Just like you're saying, that with the body, you're supposed to in the morning to write what's the target of the day. That forcefulness in me, it makes I go completely blank. And I don't need anybody to remind me about the Dharma or check up on me on how I'm doing with my practice. I've been solo studying since I was 13. I don't need a reminder of any kind. So I completely relate to what you say. Absolutely,
Yes.
completely relate to it. And it's one of those things that sanghas and centers really need to understand, that as an autist, we have so many amazing abilities that they do not need to check up on us if we ask for help. But it's also because we're not timid in that way. You know, if I have a problem and I need help, I ask an order member for help. And it's not that I'm hindering to it, that it would, you know, I'm very direct about it. This is what I need, exactly what you're saying. So I completely relate.
Yes, exactly. I actually, I think I don't know, I think I startled some of my Sangha brothers and sisters one time, because after a meeting that we had, I pulled who I knew they were senior, you know, and had been practicing for longer than me. And there was an area that I was struggling with. And I was like, can I please speak to the three of you?
Yeah.
And I was very direct and blunt. And this is what I'm struggling with. Can you help me? And they were just kind of like, sure. And they were beautiful and loving about it. But I think they were so like taken aback, because I am just, I'm very direct, and I'm very, you know, if I need help with something, I'm going to get that help.
Yes.
Exactly what you were saying. So, and same with my teacher, you
Yes.
know, I'm very, you know, I think I challenge him in some ways, which I kind of find funny, whereas other people won't, you know, other, you know, there's some reverence around my teacher because of how long he has practiced and studied, and probably, you know, and deserved in a lot of ways. But I don't have the same pedestal, I guess, for people.
Could we talk about autism and authority? Because those two things, they do not gel. I'm the same. I don't believe in authority. I don't believe in somebody being more worth or having a better standing, or being, you know, I have the same value as a beetle and a kitten and a, you know, the Dalai Lama. It's like we are all one. You know, let's not fool ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. We are all one. So I completely relate to that I also in my life have experienced that I haven't it has been taken as disrespectful because I haven't shown that reverence that I should have towards another person. It's not disrespectful at all. I see me as that person and that person as me, so it's like I don't have that
No.
that distance that neurotypical people they have to authority, where they put people into categories in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. You know, I've had professors that I thought were, you know, I thought at the time maybe I was putting them on a pedestal, but it wasn't so much that. It's just that, you know, I really had profound respect for, you know, what they've been able, just what they've been able to contribute to the world. That's really all it was. But at the same time, I also understood that they're people. They just like me.
Yeah.
You know, and that there is really no, I actually had a professor one time who called me out on my facial stimming, because I have I don't even notice I'm doing it a lot of the times where I have facial stimming. So I was sitting in class, and after the fact, he called me up and was like, can you explain to me why you're making horrible faces to me in the middle of my lecture? And I was like, at first I was like, I had no idea. And then of course I had to explain to him that I was autistic and give him a little bit of education. But, you know, to me, it's like, you may just because, you know, I've been called a genius in certain areas. That is so wrong, because I may, you know plants and animals and nature, but I don't know a thing about, you know, cars or, you know, mechanics or, you know, and I know people who are brilliant in those things. So, you know, to me, the whole genius thing is relative. It's so relative. So, no, I completely agree with you about, you know, and I am a deep ecologist. So I believe that all beings are equal with each other.
Yes.
I just do. We are all equal with each other.
Yes.
So yeah, that really does. Yeah.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
yeah. So I have a tendency to challenge my my teacher, Fred, on things. And he actually recently told me that I don't need to tell people that I'm autistic. And yeah, and at first it was off-putting and I didn't really understand it, but he's coming from the place of Dharma. He's coming from the place of that we all have pure Buddha nature. Underneath of all of this, we all have pure Buddha nature. But I very strongly told him that I actually wrote him a long letter saying that, I do need to tell people that I'm autistic at times, because in the relative historical dimension in which, we are all in, there's so much ignorance. And, not only do I need to educate people for my children, but also for other, autistic people as well. And also in certain circumstances and situations, it allows me to not wear the mask.
Yes.
It allows me to just be able to be who I am. And he feels like I should just be able to do that anyway. And that is wonderful. And maybe I'll get to that place at some point, but I'm not quite there yet, and
yeah, it's also about ignorance, because he doesn't have the life where he has no idea how it is to be stigmatized for you sitting in a room and not doing what you're supposed to do, or stimming while you're meditating. As we talked about when we met in Leeds, that all of us have tried to be being told off for stimming while we're meditating, because all of us have been told afterwards, by somebody, that you should sit still, you shouldn't move, you should be quiet, you're disturbing the rest of us. And some of the people that has contributed to the book has left sanghas simply because they did not fit. They were not told to leave, but they could not fit into the box. So I understand what he said, that we all have Buddha nature. I completely understand it, but we have a full lifetime of experiences where it helps, not being told that it's a tea break, you need to go out and so socialize and mingle and make friends, but that I'm allowed to stay in the shrine room or go into the library and just be there. It is important. It is important. And just like if we were in a wheelchair, it would be great to share that we need a ramp to go into the Sangha. It's the same. We need a ramp as autists in the Sangha as well.
Yes, exactly. So speaking to that, like I said, I was just recently in a retreat. It was a sound retreat. And if I'm being completely honest, I love music. I always have. I sang before I spoke. I would sing to myself just to soothe myself when I was a child. And so now I'm a chanter in our community. So I love music so much. And so when they talked about a sound retreat, I don't think I completely understood what they meant. And it was with two roshis, Japanese roshi, Japanese sodas and roshis. And unfortunately, at the time, I've come to, I don't know, I'm a little easier with it now, but at the time, our center is on a very busy street. It is on a very, a lot of traffic and things. So they just open the windows and let all that traffic flood in during our meditations. And the first night I had a migraine. I went to bed with a migraine. I was so overwhelmed. The second day, I had a little mini meltdown right after the first session. And I was, I was just, I felt like I was going to come out of my own skin. It was just so overwhelming to me. So I brought, thank goodness, I have earbuds like this that are somewhat noise canceling that I brought with me. And we have these beautiful quiet rooms that are meditation rooms in our residential center, and they look out over the garden. And I sat there with my Teddy, my little sweet companion that I took with me. I sat there with my Teddy and with my earbuds in, and I blocked it all out and just listened to my own heart and breathed and breathed.
Yeah.
And it was so soothing. And after I had gotten myself more centered, I came back and we had this sharing period with one of the roshis. I explained to him that this was very difficult for me, very difficult. And I shared with him that I, was autistic. And he was very, lovely about it and told me to do what I need to do to take care of myself, that if I need these, that it is totally fine to use, that it was no problem whatsoever. But then we had towards the end of the retreat, we had another period where he wanted us to not move during a meditation, not move at all. And I tend to rock when I meditate. I rock when I'm chanting. People probably think I'm Stevie Wonder because I kind of, I do this when I chant, and it just helps me, it just soothes me. So when he told me not to move, that rule-oriented person was like, oh, the Roshi told me not to move. Okay, I'm not going to move. But I was so tense, I couldn't really meditate. It was pointless for me. It was completely pointless for me. So he kind of made comments about, how we need to settle like fallen snow. We need to be still and settled like fallen snow. And that was completely contradictory to the yoga practice that I had, experienced. And even through Qigong, I do Qigong as well, which is also movement and meditation through movement. So I asked him about that, and his response was, well, maybe you were a rabbi in another life. And I guess it was supposed to be funny, but I didn't get it at the time. And I actually had to ask somebody. I was like, was he trying to be funny? Because I didn't understand it. So anyway, no, and he agreed with me, if that's what works for me, if that is how I am able to still my mind, then that is, totally fine. Exactly. But it was very difficult for me at the time, because like I said, I am so rule-based that I wanted to do what they were telling me to do.
Yes.
But it was so horribly painful for me in the process.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, that we have to take care of ourselves as autistic people in this practice, and, go against the grain somewhat. And because there is a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of things that unfortunately, the neurotypical people in our communities don't understand. And, if they see us doing something, maybe we need to explain it to them so that they can understand and be a little bit more compassionate later, or to another person, who may be experiencing the same thing and may not know or understand that they're autistic.
Yeah. What the response that I normally get when I speak with neurotypical people about stimming, it is that they say, you stim because you're calming, you're soothing your mind, or you're soothing your body. And I'm like, yeah, it's partly right, but I'm actually bringing up, an even playing field. When I'm stimming, like when I'm doing this with my hair, I can hear what you're saying. If I'm sitting still, I can't hear what you're saying. I do not understand what you're saying. So just like when I'm chanting, if I'm sitting still while chanting, I'm not getting the experience of the chant. But if I'm rocking while I'm chanting, then oh my goodness, it's wonderful, and I love chanting. I think it's amazing. So it's like stimming is bringing us to the even playing field, where we get the experience that the neurotypical people they have by sitting completely still, we get when we're stimming.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. So my practice now, like I said, I'm studying the Dhammapada, and I meditate 30 minutes. Actually, I meditate almost 40 minutes because my husband, he's fairly new. So I have taken the, what I guess they would be considered precepts in other traditions. We call them the 5 mindfulness trainings in our tradition with Thai. So I've taken those vows, to me, and I've been in classes with people who really struggle with, but to me, I love the structure. I love the, this is what you do. This is how, and honestly, a lot of them just fell in line with the way that I wanted to be in the world anyway. Yes. So I love the structure, and, I love all of those things. So my husband, he's getting ready to take his 5 mindfulness trainings on Sunday. So he meditates for 10 minutes. I meditate with him initially for 10 minutes in the morning before he has to run off to work. And then I sit for 30 minutes in silent meditation. Usually it's metta. I have been doing a lot of metta meditation lately. Because I do have a bit of an inner critic. So I'm trying to soothe that inner critic with some metta. And then I usually spend about half an hour in study, studying sutras or, some other type of Buddhist text of some kind. So yeah, so that's generally my practice. And I spend a lot of time at our center. I do, but like I said, I work with the plants. Our grounds are absolutely gorgeous. So we have these bamboo gardens and other things, and so we want it to be. It is in the middle of a city, so we want it to be as beautiful and nourishing as it can be. So we have all of these plantings and gardens and things like that. So that's really why I'm there, to be with I love the people, but I also go to be with the plants. So because that's my thing. Plants and birds. Those have always kind of been my two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Could I, in the book, in the chapter, you have written about how you have used Buddhism for your meltdowns. Could I ask you to go into, because I would like to talk about meltdowns, shutdowns, and burnout.
Yes.
But could you just share how you're using Buddhism for your meltdowns, how that has supported you?
So a meltdown for someone like me, because meltdowns can look like different things for people. But I mean, if you were to look at me having a meltdown, you probably would think, 2-year-old having a temper tantrum, but it's not really that. I get to the, so London is a perfect example. I was in London, and sorry to use London as an example, but it was so overwhelming. So we had been walking around. There were so many people. There was so much stimulation. Being on the subway, there is this grating, awful sound that I could just not block out, no matter how hard I tried. And I for some reason, I couldn't come back to my breath when I needed to. My practice was not as available to me as I would have liked it to be. So we got back to I tried my best to hold it in until we got back to the hotel room, but I was hyperventilating walking down the street. So by the time we got back to the hotel room, I was couldn't breathe, couldn't really see. I'm not really coherent. I don't know really what's going on. It's very difficult to describe, but I tend to rock very aggressively when I'm in a meltdown. I have been known to bang my head against things. And honestly, it's just that everything is so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. I don't know, I don't know how to react or respond. So my practice, being able to come back. So I've always retreated inside ever since I was little. That's been normal for me, but it hasn't always been the safest place because it is can be so chaotic, and what's on the outside feeds the inside. So I don't watch TV. I try to limit, as much negative input as I possibly can, because I know how negatively it affects me, and it's direct input. So being able to nourish myself with my plants in my garden and coming back to my island, as Ty calls it, this safe space. And it's a visual thing. It's something that I visualize in my mind, but it's very helpful to me. I'm able to come back to that place and ask myself, these questions, where am I? What's going on? I ask myself these grounding questions. Okay, what's going on right now? How are we feeling? What are the feeling tones right now? Just all of this inquiry. And it took a couple of years for me to really get the hang of where I could get my mind to a calm enough place that I could even ask myself these questions. So it at least for me, it was a process. It really was. So, but something as simple as just stopping, going back to my breathing, being in my body right now as it is, in the present moment, and realizing that right here, right now, in this present moment, everything is okay. Everything is okay. It may seem like there's a storm going on, but really,
and it may feel like there's a storm going on. Yeah.
Yes, it absolutely does at times, you know, that the house is on fire or whatever, you know, whatever metaphor you want to use, but I'm okay. I'm okay. And being able to catch it, because there are, like, you know, there are rumblings to it. Like, I've learned to understand that there are signals, there
Yes.
are, you know, things that, you know, warn me, we're not doing well right now. We're not doing so great right now. You know, this situation is not okay for us. This is not a safe space for us, you know, and either taking myself out of that situation, you know, completely, or just, you know, understanding that this is what's going on right now, you know, but I'm okay. So really catching it beforehand has been very, very helpful to me.
Yes.
And just watching my mind, just really sitting and watching what, almost as like, so I'm a scientist, so I started just kind of watching my mind as a scientist, kind of like a separate observer, if that makes any sense, you know, not as Dani, but as just the separate, so what's going on right now?
Yeah.
The curious observer, you know, like what's going on with my mind right now, and really coming to terms with how it reacts and how it works, and how it, you know, how it does things. That has been monumentally helpful for
Yes.
me. So
Yes.
that's what the practice kind of gives us, that, you know, understanding of the, you know, that mind consciousness, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I completely agree. I do exactly the same. I have that the image of me of me being anthropologist, looking at my mind, you know, looking at what is going on, and knowing that I don't need to react to my thoughts. A thought is just a sensory experience. I don't need to act on it. It's like sense of smell, sense of sight, sense of hearing. A thought is just that selfing going on, and I can look at it as an anthropologist and really separate, you know. So it's just on the same level as smelling, tasting, hearing, touching, you know.
yeah, and it's not just sensory, you know, it's not just the overwhelm. If something changes, I don't necessarily like things to change. Like
Yes.
if I have a set schedule of things and something happens to my schedule, oh, to me, that's a big deal. You know, to me, you know, something like that happening, it has consequences, and it just creates a lot of anxiety. So, yeah, so change is a big, but change, you know, in the practice, I've learned that change is inevitable, that, you know, things are impermanent.
Yeah.
And so coming to that reality and understanding that,
Yeah.
okay, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But again, it's not the way that I experience it is that it's not the change because I'm losing control. A lot of neurotypical people think it's about losing control, and now I'm not in control anymore. Not about that at all. It's about that in me there is a safety. It's a safe space to be when I know
Yes,
how my day is gonna be, and when I
yes,
know what tea I'm drinking in the afternoon, and when I'm eating my lunch, and there's a
yes,
safety that makes me work as a normal person, as a neurotypical person, when those things are you know, have a structure, when I have a structure like that. Uh,
yes.
and it's like the for any people that gets to know me, the best advice in knowing me is don't ever throw me a surprise party. That would be,
No.
I would be waiting in the car. Yeah. Would be the worst thing that could ever happen.
Exactly. I know. It's kind of interesting, but you know, for like gift type things, I usually make my husband a list.
Yeah.
That way, you know, that way you know, for something, you know, silly like that. But that way, I mean, my son's the same way. My youngest son, we thought it would be wonderful to take him to the store one time and surprise him and just let him pick out a bicycle. We walked out of there with nothing because it was so terribly overwhelming, number
Yes.
one. And
Yes.
you'd think I would have understood this, but you know, but I didn't at the time. And you know, he wasn't expecting it. He
Yeah.
literally said, I wasn't expecting this. So, you know, most people would be like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I completely relate. I would also like to research about the bike before I get the bike. You know, I can't just forget to go
yes,
and buy a bike. I mean, who are we? Animals? You need to research. You need to
thank
research about
you.
the bike before before you buy
I
it. I
know.
completely understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Completely.
So I wasn't very skillful in that way because I'm the same way. Before I make any decisions, I research everything to the hilt. I research and that's what makes me such a good, that's what made me such a good scientist was, I
Yes.
do research everything anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, meltdowns can also not be explosive like mine. They can also what we call turtling. In my household, we like to use animal analogies. So it's kind of going into your own shell, it's kind of you know, my two of my sons do this, and I used to do this when I was younger as well, where I just stopped speaking. I
Yes.
just completely stopped speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't speak if I wanted to,
Yes.
and it's very frustrating for the people around for the roundies because they just they don't understand because I'm so articulate and I'm so smart and blah 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 and all these labels and things, but when I'm in that space, it's hard to describe. It just absolutely is. So, and my sons become the same way,
Mm.
so that could also be a meltdown, is just completely shutting down altogether. You just don't want to I'm just just I need time to process. I need time to you know
Yeah.
I need whatever is going on to go away.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, because it's like the two ways that is normal for us to react, that either we react with a meltdown, which is so frowned upon in our society because it is scary. I mean, watching somebody going through a meltdown, it is scary to watch from the outside. And
Hmm.
it's not a childhood temper tantrum that is being thrown,
No.
not at all. It's like a sneeze. It's like something that you cannot hold back, and it just happens. It's just that explosion. And
Yes.
for a lot of autists, it literally destroys things around them. And for a lot of autists, they also start to self-harm in some way,
Hmm.
because
Yes.
it's easier to calm the mind with cutting, for example, instead of
Hmm.
trashing the place completely. So
Hmm.
meltdowns is something that we really, in my opinion, really need to talk about and create space for, because it's simply because the mind is overloaded.
Hmm.
The other way to react, and it's the way that I react, that's the shutdown. And
Hmm.
it feels like, the way I can only talk about how it feels from the inside, it feels like my hearing is hearing everything. I'm hearing everything. I'm like, I mean, dogs come to me for advice about what I'm hearing. It's like I'm hearing everything. I can smell everything. And it's like the layers of sight and the layers of sound, the layers of smell, my body with everything, that is just too much on the body, and I'm just completely overwhelmed. Then I go
Yes.
mute as well. And what happens when I hate the word selective selective mutism, because there's
I know.
nothing
I don't
selective
either.
about it. It's autistic
No.
mutism. I really want to
Yes.
change that word. It's not
Yes.
selective. If I could choose any different, I would do any different, but I can't. It's an
Hmm.
autistic mutism. And what happens
Yeah.
to me is that when I'm there, I can't understand spoken word. I don't understand what people say to me, and I can't say anything. And I have experienced so many times in my life, before I knew that I was autistic, with friends, girlfriends, and partners, that they take it as me, being a diva, not wanting to talk with them, that I am ghosting them, and I'm, leave me alone, like that. Not like that at all. It's just
Hmm.
really, I'm a cactus. I'm really a cactus. Do not touch me. Do not talk to me. Just leave me alone. Dark room, silence, and I will get back to you in 72 hours. Because
Yes.
until then, I'm not human. I don't function on a normal level.
Yes, exactly. And my partner has struggled with that with me, with my meltdowns, because he's very wants to comfort me and wants to, hold me and hug me, and I don't want to be touched.
No.
Do
Cactus.
not,
Yeah,
do not
complete. Yeah.
touch me during those times. It's no, it's so adverse to me to have any physical contact whatsoever. So I've often felt bad,
Mm.
but it's exactly what you're saying. I just, just, and,
It's just
leave me alone.
you can't pile any more on. I'm completely full. Even a hug or another smell or anything, I can't take anything else in.
Yes.
I'm completely done, and I just need silence and quiet and solitude, and I will get back to you in 72 hours, because it's not
Yes.
there's even no exchange. I do sometimes, I'm able to write. I can't read what is written to me, but I can write, so I can say, I'm a cactus, leave me alone, and then people now understand, what that
Yes.
means.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So understanding my own mind has helped me with my children, and helping them with their anxieties and, struggles that they have with their, with
Yeah.
their own situations and things, because, the world's a very overwhelming place.
Yes.
So
Um,
yeah.
I normally when we talk about meltdown and shutdowns, two things that is very, very close related to that is the masking. And
Hmm.
the masking is it's so funny, because whenever I meet neurotypical people and say that I'm autistic, then they usually say, yes, I'm a little bit autistic too, or we are all a little bit on the spectrum. And in the beginning, I really took offense, because I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. But now I'm beginning to understand what they mean. I think that all of us, everyone, neurotypical and neurodiverse alike, all of us are masking, because there's this stupid box that we need to fit into, that
Yes.
normalcy of how it is to be a human being, where we need to chit chat to acknowledge the other person's existence, instead of just talking about relevant stuff right away. That they're like those rules that need to be. Men can't talk about when they're sad or upset, they can't talk about their traumas, so they
Hmm.
bottle it up and kill themselves. It's like, come
Yeah.
on, there's this stupid box that nobody fits into, and all of us are masking, all of us are trying to fit into that box, and it drives us insane, and it splits the world in two, and it's like the worst. So now when I hear neurotypical people say that I'm also a little bit autistic, or we're all a little bit on the spectrum, the only thing I hear now is that I'm masking so much in my life that I completely relate to what you're talking about. So I just have
Yes.
so much compassion now when I hear people say that, because masking it's a huge one for all of us, but it's a very, very huge one for autistic, because we are so demonized and what do you call it, ostracized, when we are like pushed out and not a part of the community if we do not mask. Uh,
Yes.
and if we do mask, then we get migraines and burnout, and meltdowns and shutdowns. And if we don't mask, then we are not part of society. So
Yes.
masking is like it's a huge one.
It is, absolutely. And I didn't realize how much I masked. Honestly, it was interesting. Being with all of you in Leeds was a big eye opener for me, for how much I mask, and internal masking as well. I
Yes,
mean, a lot of internal
yes,
masking goes on that
yes.
I didn't even understand until I started watching my mind and watching, how all that works. So no, it is absolutely a big deal. And I think you're right. I think everybody has this societal, construct that we're all expected to go along with. And I don't even think most of us realize why it's there in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do these things and we're like, all of a sudden we start asking ourselves, why do we do this? Oh, this is because it's the way it's always been, or something silly like that. So I'm finding that, the more comfortable I get just being myself, the less those constructs matter to me. And, I don't know, it's, yeah, I'm kind of over the societal box and everybody trying to fit, because right now, and like I said, we struggle in school with my child. They're trying to, either he has to go to university or he has to go to trade school. Those are like his two ultimate options in life, period. And I'm like,
No, 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 no.
so very sorry. But so, I actually told one of his counselors, and I think she was kind of shocked. I'm like, I honestly don't care if he becomes a, homeless person backpacking across the country, panhandling, playing guitar on the street corners. I really don't care. If those are his choices and what makes him happy in life, he can do those things, so I'm like, no, don't try to squeeze my very special child, because he is amazing, into your silly capitalist, constructs. So yeah, I totally.
Yeah. But I would like to talk about your 3 boys in a second, but first I just would like to talk about the last thing about burnout.
Okay.
Because burnout is kind of like the result of when we are trying to fit and trying to have a normal life with a normal job, with all the normal expectations, and meeting with friends in the weekend, and all of those things that neurotypical people, they get energy by doing, we're completely deflated by doing, but trying so hard to all of that to happen, and it always ends with burnout.
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah.
I've never actually, so I struggled in the regular workplace. I've had regular like office jobs when I was younger, but I've almost been fired. I was fired one time because I was very honest and they did not appreciate that whatsoever. So I was fired, and then I was almost fired and brought into thank goodness my boss at the time was very sweet, and she was very understanding, and she was almost like a mother figure to me. But I tended to say things that other people thought were inappropriate. And so I was almost fired. So me in a regular, job type setting has never, it hasn't been positive. It hasn't been a positive situation. I was, not too long ago, I was the head of a rehab hospital for birds. And again, I tend to be very black and white about how things should be. And I was constantly butting heads because of the way that I am with the people who were in charge and higher up. And I got burnt out, constantly trying to put on this mask of whatever, they wanted, and had to, I had to quit. I just had to, and there were other reasons why I left that position. I've been rehabbing for a really long time. And I was honestly just burnt out from the trauma of, having birds die, and things like that. So, but yeah, and as an activist, I'm expected to, go to these social things all the time, and, oh my goodness, these dinners, and, testify, and I have testified before, Congress and things like that. I went to the State of the Union address in Washington, D.C. and had a meltdown in the middle of the Capitol. I'm serious. I was so overwhelmed.
Good girl.
I did. I had a total meltdown. And thank goodness there was this lovely state officer there who was very sweet and kind and helped me get out of there. But yeah, so, as an activist, you're expected to do these social things and be this certain way. And that has just, oh my goodness, besides being burnt out from, the issues and things that I work in, which are environmental, animal rights, and social justice type stuff, just being burnt out from the just state of the world, just being in a room where you have to mingle with people, and I was always a wallflower. I was always, I hardly ever spoke with people because it's literally exhausting. And I'm so bad at it that I always felt I was bad at it, that I just, I hated it so much, because they just, like I said, I just want to talk about birds and plants.
Yeah.
And I would inevitably try to steer conversations in that way, but I was so horribly inept that, yeah, it was actually physically, and I would leave exhausted. And there are still times when very often where I leave social situations, I'm drained. I'm completely, absolutely drained.
Yes.
So I've now shifted my, I'm more of a consultant now. So it's on my terms, it's on my time. you know, and my activism is more YouTube based now. So again, it's on my terms. It's what I want to, you know, share and talk about and, you know, do. And, you know, I make a video when I want to make a video, kind of a thing. You know, it's that kind of a situation. But no, I've experienced profound, you know, burnouts over the years, you know, from trying to fit into that social construct that I just have never felt comfortable being, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I completely relate. Also lots of burnouts for exactly the same reason. Really try to fit in and trying to be, you know, good in everything, while inside it's just so completely overwhelming.
Yes.
To me, what has helped me in the burnout and in the shutdowns that I'm experiencing, it's really going into that icky, painful place that is in the body while I'm in the shutdown or while I'm in burnout, and really ask myself, can I be in a body that feels this, you know, overwhelmed? Can I be in a body where the sounds are, you know, pounding in my ears and the smells are almost suffocating me? Can I be in a body where this is happening? And just by doing that, just by creating space to what is and not fighting what is, half of the battle is the second arrow, you know, like in the Buddhist story, you know, it's the second arrow just disappears because it's only the first arrow that's left. And that is the sensation that I have in my body that is so overwhelming, but that's it. There's not more anymore piled on top of it. That's it. And I can be with that, and I can stay with that, and I can create space for that and breathe with that. And then slowly I'm getting back to normal again.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I agree.
Can we talk about your 3 boys? Because
Yeah,
you're blessed with 3 boys, where one,
I am.
all 3 are autistic. One of them
Yes.
has meltdowns, the other one has shutdowns, and the last one has both. Could you please,
Yes,
could you please
yes.
walk me through how you manage that? How is life? How are you accommodating? How do you accommodate with your own autism as well? Because it's not like you have the surplus on the account as a neurotypical person would have. You have an
Mhm.
understanding, however. So could you walk
Yes.
me through that?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so let's start with my Connor, my youngest. So Connor is very quiet. He speaks when he wants to. He's very thoughtful, which, like I said, in the school situation is a struggle. We homeschool him because it can take him up to 5 minutes to respond.
Yes.
You know, and to me it's totally fine. You know, I mean, he takes time to he's very, like I say, he's very quiet. He takes time to process. He needs that time to process what he is going, what you have said to him, and for him to actually respond. He also has speech, um I don't like to say difficulties because you know, in a different world, and that's where they wouldn't necessarily be difficulties, but he over the years, you have to really listen to him
Mm.
when he speaks, because it's not always there were years that he sounded like he was from another country, like maybe from the UK, or somebody with a very thick, you know, accent or something like that. But no, he is brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. He's very I don't know, he hasn't quite found his one thing, but he right now he's into knives. He loves different special knives and things like that. And technically they're all very, very smart when it comes to computers and technology and gaming and all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of their world. That is the computer, the technology, that is their world. And it was hard for me because that was not my world when I was their age. So but that's their safe space. That's what, you know, that's what's comfortable for them. Connor has never really up until probably the last couple of years, again, he struggled with friends. He never had friends in school. He was always, on his own, quiet. But yeah, when he is overwhelmed, he does not speak at all. He was like very much like me. He could go for days and probably not say anything at all. But he's so tender-hearted and so very, very sweet. He loves, we just recently got him, I'm a wildlife photographer. My husband and I both are, and we recently bought him a camera so that he could go out with us, and he's so great at it. Oh my goodness, he's so brilliant at it. So he loves birds and nature and wildlife. He was one of the reasons why I did this with our property, turned it into a wildlife habitat, was for him, because he always had that connection like I have with nature. So yeah, so that's my Connor. But yeah, when he is overwhelmed or anxious, or he goes quiet. He gets very, very, very quiet. And I have had to fight fiercely, my husband and I both have, with the school system in making them understand, how Connor is. And they actually physically abused him at times in school. Yeah, they singled him out in school. Oh yeah. So he had a situation where he was actually on the phone crying, sobbing to me, and the office person physically grabbed him and removed him from the office while I was on the phone with him. So it was that situation. And then he had a teacher. So Connor was overwhelmed and he was in his classroom and his head was down on his desk, and the teacher was calling on
shutting
him.
everything out, shutting everything
shutting
out, trying to
everything out.
minimize everything by making darkness.
Yes,
I relate to
yes,
that.
exactly. So the teacher kept calling on him though, and finally, and wouldn't give up. And finally, one of the kids in the classroom went behind him and kept poking him. So Connor lashed out and threw a book. And so the teacher said that he was dangerous. He was dangerous, in the classroom. So he sat Connor off in a desk on his own in the corner and told the entire classroom why he was doing this. So Connor refused and went back to the normal place that he always had sat at. So the teacher then moved the entire classroom away from him. So that was the final straw for us. And, after we tried very hard to relate to this teacher, how horrible that was for him and traumatic that was for him to do to him, we eventually just pulled him out of school and homeschooled them. So, and Brendan, so that's my Connor. He's my sweet, shy, just very thoughtful, but brilliant. Yeah, he was attached to me. I couldn't put him down for the first 2 years he was born. Like he actually like would not leave me. He wouldn't go to anybody else. So he slept with me every, for the first 2 years of his life. We were together. So my Brendan, that's my other biological child, my oldest one. He's the opposite. He is very charismatic. He wanted everyone to be his friend. We would take him, to outings and things, and he would be, scare me a little bit because he'd be like, "Hi, I'm Brendan, and I'm so and so age," and everybody was automatically his friend. So that was interesting. Brendan, he's the explosive one. When he gets overwhelmed, he gets very physical, not so much with other people, but he would hurt himself, and he would try to hurt himself. So my husband and I at times, so he didn't hurt himself, would have to bear hug him, to just kind of let him kind of wear himself out. But it was just a comforting thing. He wants us to do that, where every once in a while he wants us to just really hold him tight, so that and afterward he's like, "Oh, thanks, Mom." Yeah. So a lot of the holes in our walls we've had holes in the walls over the years because of Brendan. And he had a lot of the same issues in school. Like I said, he turned over the principal's desk, but Brendan, he would run. He would take off running and to escape whatever situation he felt was not okay. So he would just take off running. And school resource officer that we had on staff got a lot of exercise running after my Brendan. She even had to jump a fence one time. So yeah, but we really struggled in the beginning though because of his mixed diagnosis and so much misinformation and and things like that. So we honestly didn't handle things probably as skillfully as we should have because we just didn't understand and know. So yeah, he's still very much, he's always had this one grouping of friends, Brendan, and he still has that same very specific grouping of friends. And they all are interesting in their own way, so yeah, he's growing up to be just they both are just wonderful young men. Connor is 17 and Brendan is 19, going to be 20 in May. So yeah, so my Brendan is very much like me in so many ways, personality wise. So then there's Bradley. We took on Bradley was Brendan's best friend in middle school, and Bradley is autistic. Well, his family did not know how to, they just treated him very, very poorly. Very, very poorly. They neglected him or they abused him. So it was verbal abuse a lot of the times, he's a very shy, sweet. So my boys are very tall. My Brendan is like 6'5", my Bradley is 6'6". Yeah. So Bradley is my gentle giant, as I call him. He's very, very shy, very sweet. When he gets upset or so he used to have headaches. That was a big thing he would constantly, when he was living in his previous situation, he would have headaches and stomach aches all the time.
It's exactly what we just talked about, that with masking migraine comes. Yeah.
Yes, he had horrible migraines, horrible stomach aches, and he would sleep. He would just sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. So he started coming over to our house, and it got to the point where I was like, you're not going back. You're not going back there. So he's been with us for many years. We never officially adopted him, but he's lived with us since he was 12, pretty much. So yeah, this was just a much more stable, safe, environment for him where we understood him, and were able to give him the tools that, he needed. So yeah, so he doesn't have the headaches and the stomach aches, thank goodness, anymore. But when he is stressed, he will still sleep, or he still, well, he'll go into his little shell and he'll sleep for long periods of time at times. So yeah. My two oldest boys are actually working. They actually have jobs.
Oh wow.
I'm so proud of them. Yeah. So it's college, we don't know yet. Like I said, we tend to be a bit more free-spirited when it comes to those things, and what'll happen will happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all that. The last thing I would like to share is where you talk about the boy in the book. You talk about the boys with the breathing in calmer body, breathing out calmer mind. Would you walk us through that?
Yeah, so that helps me, honestly. So when I'm calm, they are calm. Yes. I still have meltdowns, even with my practice, I still have meltdowns, but they're not every week. It's very seldom. It has to be a pretty serious situation. And the same with my boys. They really haven't had many meltdowns since I have had this practice, because I think my calmness, it helps them to also be calm. So we do that, when they are struggling, we go back to our breathing, you know, we come into our body, you know, and that was one of Ty's meditations, you know. You know, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my mind. And we just kind of do that over and over and over again. And Brendan now, because they're so techie, he has it on his watch. He has a breathing exercise that he uses when he needs to calm himself, you know, so he has that grounding, you know, so he uses that as well. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. That was all the questions that I had. Do you have something that you would like to add, something that we didn't touch on that we...
Honestly, just, you know, no, I don't think so. Just sensitivity, you know, in practice centers is a big deal. In
Yes.
Sangha, I think it's such a big thing because this is such a wonderful practice to have, I think, for autistic people, but we need to make it more friendly and accessible, you
Yes.
know, to autistic people, which is why I was so excited that, you know, that our book was a thing at all, you know, because I know what a challenge it can be for me. So, and I recently met another autistic person within our Sangha. They were introduced to me by someone someone else who is not neurotypical, who's mentoring them, who thought it would be beneficial for them to meet me.
Yes.
So, yeah, so just having that, maybe another, if you know of an autistic person in your center, you know, and if they're comfortable with it, allowing, you know, just, it's so comforting to have someone else who knows, who understands.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. So
And
yeah, that was it.
also, I also want to say, in the book, there's a chapter called "A Short Guide to Autism Sensitive Practices," which is recommendations for centers and Buddhist communities on how they can support and help and accommodate autistic people. Because exactly like you say, it's so easy, but we need to make aware of it, you know, with and older members or you know, leaders or bhikkhus or bhikkhunis, they just need to know about how it is to be an autistic Buddhist, that
Yes.
that there are certain things which we need support in,
Yes.
which are very, very easy to accommodate. I mean, it's just a quiet room or allowing us to go out for a walk instead of having tea and cake. It's like very, very, very basic, easy stuff. And then
Well,
also,
the practice looks different. The practice, you know, this particular person that I met, they are not comfortable with sitting practice, but they like walking meditation.
there we go. Exactly. There we go. Yeah. And it's just about, you know, getting to know the autist, because this is just two autistic women that are here. We're not representative for the entire umbrella of people, you know, that there's so many different nuances in it. But what all of us have in common is that we need support in different ways for us to function on a level on par with the neurotypical person. And the last thing that I would like to say for any center or Sangha that is listening, please keep the hybrid meetings.
Yes.
Keep the hybrid meetings, keep the hybrid retreats, because like we talked about regarding retreats, it's a sensory overload, and we're not enjoying the retreat as a neurotypical person is. However, when we are at home and we can do a silent retreat at home in our own environment, we are so diligent in our practice that we do not need to be at a retreat center, but we still would like to participate, you know, in the group.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, no, I think I've gone on and on.
Thank you. Yeah, we could talk for hours, you and I. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely a pleasure to talk with you. Absolutely a pleasure to talk with you. I'm so happy. I'm just gonna stop the recording, and then before you leave, we can just have a few words. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that everybody listening also enjoyed this amazing interview. Thank you.